Okay, let's just get right to it. Here we go. This is from Representative Muskowitz right after the skiff with the David Grush material, and I assume you guys know what I'm talking about. Let's just see what old Muskowitz has to say.
And so, so this meeting, unlike the one we had previously when we did this briefing, this one actually moved the needle.
Very good. So that'll lead to more public hearings?
I think this one's going to lead to a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of new questions and a lot of new areas to ask and poke in based on what we got in this.
Okay, so that was really, really intriguing, right? It's going to lead to UFO hearings. It's going to lead to more UFO hearings, presumably by the House Oversight Committee. But it is also going to lead to a lot of things. What are those things? Are they going to get access to the UAP facilities, to the crash retrieval and reverse engineering facilities? Well, that is what some others are saying. According to Matthew Pines, they were told of specific facilities by the ICIG. They will now try to gain access or door knock. So, according to Matthew Pines, who is the Director of Security Advisor for Sentinel-1, he is saying that, so Congress knows the locations of these places, and we know that David Grush knows the locations of those places, and that he provided that information to the ICIG. So, presumably, the House Oversight Committee, the members that went there were able to get this information, and now they are going to try to get access to them. So that seems to be what Muskowitz is talking about. It's going to lead to many other things, he says. I love it. I love it. So will we have, my dream where Tim Burchett and Muskowitz and the others are standing upon a UFO at one of these facilities with a live press conference? Boom, that is disclosure right there, guys. And it is not inconceivable that it can happen. So we'll see. But there will be more hearings. Anna Polina Luna is talking about, she says, I feel confident that we have enough evidence to move forward with our first field hearing. We will be announcing details soon. That's huge, guys. That's huge. There will be more hearings, at least field hearings. And they apparently have the names of witnesses to call forward now. They have not revealed those names, and they're not going to until the proper time. And so hopefully we will also get hearings in Congress. But hey, for progress, guys, there's going to be more hearings, and they are going to knock on some doors of these facilities. Danny Silva is saying that one of the SAP locations, the Special Access Programs, is located in Florida. So people are actually talking about the locations of these facilities. This is awesome, guys. I love it. Congress is on the hunt now. They have been unleashed because of the David Grush skiff. He may not have been in the room with them, but his material was, and this information was, and now they know it, and they're going after it. I love it, guys. Meanwhile, Jim Semivan has this information to share. I know where the legacy programs are located. You should take Grush and everything he says to the bank. It's our inalienable right to know about this. Ha 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 ha. I've had other people involved tell me if you only knew the depth and complexity of this, and if you knew how frightening it is, you would understand the government's reluctance to even admit we're not alone. But yeah, some of that could be disinformation designed to make people fearful, so that they will understand why the control group isn't coming out with this information. The control group is saying, hey, well, we've got a reason. And if you only knew what we knew, you would be terrified and you would understand. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe that's not true. Maybe that's just their way of providing a cover for them not revealing this information. Either way, it looks like some of this information is coming out. Anna Polina Luna also had this to say. Grush and I had stated, Grush had stated to myself, Representative Burchett, and another member on the phone that there were people that were hurt hiding this information and keeping this information safe and or trying to come forward with this information. What I can tell you is that I believe that claim after now leaving the skiff. So yeah, so not only do the people in Congress know the locations of these facilities and are going to knock on some doors, they also know the cover-up exists and that it is brutally enforced. So hopefully that will motivate them to do something about that. Speaking of which, Tim Burchett stands by accusations some fellow members have been compromised. One of the more colorful conservative members of the U.S. House told HuffPost he stands by recent remarks in which he said some of his fellow members were likely victims of blackmail. Tim Burchett, who made comments on a December 21st podcast with a right-wing commentator, declined to elaborate on who he was talking about or give any other details. You, as a member of the media, understand confidentiality, and I appreciate that, but I am going to keep that confidential unless those two people tell me otherwise, Burchett told the HuffPost on Thursday. Asked if he was standing by his comments, he said, "Sure, I'm not going to back up." So there you go. Tim Burchett long ago said people on both sides of the aisle had been compromised on the UFO issue, and he is not backing down from that. Of course, I'm sure that's true. So it turns out that for decades, Lockheed Martin has had their own, reverse engineering, UFO reverse engineering program. And it turns out that they actually developed their own UFO. Now, of course, anybody that's been following UFO stuff probably is familiar with the stories about private companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing, etc., having their own ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, etc. So, the idea of private companies having this technology isn't new, but now we have a crazy story about a firefight between recovery teams because one of these craft, one of Lockheed Martin's craft, actually crashed in JSOC. Some military people showed up and a firefight broke out. But let's let John explain it in his own words.
It's even crazier. He says that in 2004, a Lockheed ARV, a alien reproduction vehicle, was flying in South Nevada. I will not give the small town, and it crashed. But this craft was being tracked by JSOC because JSOC thought it was actually an interplanetary or interdimensional extraterrestrial craft. I hope you're following me.
Right,
so
right. They thought this was an off-world vehicle. JSOC did.
Right. Because JSOC and most of the government have not been briefed in that Lockheed has successfully reproduced to an advanced degree replica extraterrestrial craft. In the 60s and the 70s, they developed something like a flux liner. It was a very basic alien reproduction vehicle. They made the leap. They made the jump. And I will not say how this happened. They made the leap and made the jump, kept this from the government. So when the government is tracking this Lockheed reproduction craft in 2004, they think it's an alien craft. It crashes. Again, this is his story, not my investigation, folks. It crashes in southern Nevada. JSOC, a JSOC recovery team and a Lockheed recovery team descend on this crash at the same time. Now, I'm assuming JSOC probably doesn't have military insignia because they're a covert military operation. Obviously, Lockheed didn't have military insignia. And Lockheed and JSOC, from what this whistleblower says, start a firefight because JSOC thinks it's terrorists. Lockheed thinks it's, whoever. They have to protect Lockheed's craft, and a firefight ensues. It gets even crazier. This whistleblower claims that two JSOC airmen, two JSOC members, two JSOC soldiers, however you call them, I'm not a military person, were actually killed in this firefight. He went on to say that he remembered their names, and that they were of Asian descent.
Okay, so there's a lot to break down there. That's an insane story. shared by Jon Stewart's contacts. He, I think, developed a lot of contacts in his pursuit of the truth about the alien interview. And so in summary, Lockheed Martin had their own UFO. It crashed. They had their own retrieval team standing by to retrieve it. And presumably they have a retrieval team in place, not just to retrieve their own craft, but also other, non-human craft, I would assume. The military, the government thought that it was ET, and they came in, as they do, to retrieve a downed UFO. But firefight broke out, and 2 JSOC people ended up passing away, were killed, rather. And if you're not familiar with JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, Joint Component Command of the United States Special Operations Command, and is charged with studying special operations requirements and techniques to ensure interoperability and equipment standardization to plan and conduct special operations exercises. Apparently they have a real special operation, don't they? And so this is really interesting. So John doesn't say or can't say how Lockheed Martin arrived at this technology. If they have their own functioning UFO, that seems to imply they have successfully reverse engineered ET technology, which is amazing. I mean, hats off to these guys if they have actually successfully reverse engineered ET technology. Because, people have compared that, caveman finding a cell phone. What's he going to do with that? So did a caveman actually reverse engineer a cell phone? Maybe he did. I don't know. Were they helped along in this endeavor by the control group or by ETs possibly? Because the control group seems like they were interacting with the beings for a long time. And there are multiple Lockheed Martin whistleblowers that have said that indeed Skunkworks way back in the 60s and maybe even late 50s were working with the beings. Now, they were also working with the government. It's really interesting that the government wouldn't be aware of Lockheed Martin's own vehicles. And I find that really interesting. I think maybe that's John has been told, or John's conclusion. I'm not sure about that. It seems, it's interesting because I've talked before about on the channel about the possible conflict between the private aspects of the UFO control group and the government aspects of the UFO control group. And the Schumer Rounds Amendment really made me think about that with its original focus on eminent domain, about seizing possible vehicles from places like Lockheed Martin. And that was killed by Congress people under the sway of these big aerospace companies. So that is a possible example of the conflict between the government control group and the private UFO control group. The private companies don't want to be raided and have their UFOs taken away, even though we have heard from Ross Coulthart that Lockheed Martin is trying to divest themselves of a UFO. Which is interesting. But of course, it makes sense since they've got their own UFOs. They don't need this ET technology anymore because they've already cracked it. They've already reverse engineered it or been given this technology. From multiple videos I've done talking about Lockheed Martin whistleblowers that say they were working with the beings back in the day. I'm inclined to think they didn't reverse engineer this, that they were given this technology. But I am very puzzled about the interaction between the private aspects of the UFO control group and the government aspects. I have long suspected there is probably some sort of conflict between those different aspects of the control group. I never thought they would actually engage in a firefight over it, though. Corruption, battling over Congress, sure, but actually shooting at each other, Wow. Of course, that seems to have been an accident. That does not seem to have been something they set out to do. The JSOC, oh, we're going to take this UFO away from Lockheed Martin and we're going to bring our guns. They seem like they were trying to recover a downed craft, ET. But it just raises so many questions. If this information is authentic, what does it mean? Is it possible that John was given some disinformation? Or maybe some disinformation sprinkled among real information. Like one of the pieces of information that he received was that the 2 deaths on the JSOC team, that's what David Grush was talking about when he talked about people losing their lives over the cover-up. So I don't believe that's what David Grush was talking about. There are so many stories from so many witnesses talking about the Men in Black threatening people and taking people out. So I assume and believe that's what David Grush was talking about, not this particular incident, although that could have been part of it. So could John have been given a real story with just a little untruth in it? Because that's the part they wanted us to focus on. That, maybe, they're not running around killing people to silence us, but they're giving us this nugget, this genuine story, so that we can swallow that disinfo. Just an idea I have, among those companies trying to get each other's ET tech. Does the government have spies among the private companies trying to get this stuff? Does China have spies? Does Russia have spies among Raytheon and Lockheed Martin to try to get this tech? Because that stuff is going on, guys. That stuff is going on. Some of that information is pretty wild. Here's Anna Polina Luna talking about interdimensional beings.
I think it's incredibly important to listen to the specific words that Grush uses. Grush never said extraterrestrial or alien. He said interdimensional. I think it's incredibly important.
Interdimensional. A sitting congresswoman on Capitol Hill talking about interdimensional beings right after coming out of the David Grush skiff. I love it. And of course, I talk about that all the time because that's where the evidence goes. So much of the activity that we're seeing seems other dimensional. That's just where the evidence goes. That's where my own experiences seem to go. So, that's just the way it is. I'm sure there's, 3D aliens from our 3D universe that are interacting with us. And there's probably crypto-terrestrials and beings that have always been here. There's probably time travelers. There's probably, everything, right? But a lot of it, maybe even the bulk of it, is other dimensional. Here's one of my favorite quotes from Jacques Vallée. UFO encounters are complete frameworks into which the personality of the witness becomes projected. Like a movie that terrifies you, makes you cry, laugh, or perspire in anguish, the experience becomes part of the witness's reality. The ufologists behave like social researchers who, trying to understand the phenomenon of the cinema, would randomly interview people coming out of the theaters and take their testimony at face value. Like the UFO witnesses, these people are not lying. Some of them have seen Godzilla, others have seen Bambi. The experience, in every case, was real to them. But the reality we should inquire about, the reality UFO researchers are often ignoring, is the movie projector high up in a small, dark, locked room near the ceiling. In that room is the technology that will give you both Bambi and Godzilla, Star Wars, and yes, even Close Encounters. Like the technology of the cinema, the UFO technology is a meta system. It generates whatever phenomena are appropriate at our level, at a given epoch, in a given state of the market. As Bertrand Muhust, I'm butchering that name, has brilliantly proven, the symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiation, ritual, or astral voyage that is embedded in the traditions of every culture. In that sense, the UFO experience is a very real trigger that releases powerful imagery we are all carrying in our collective unconscious. In Jungian terms, it is useless to ask why some witnesses see giants and others see dwarfs, why some some abductions are benign and some are harmful, while some encounter victims are shown sophisticated technology, while others report, violations and other indignities. While our fellow ufologists are clustering on the sidewalk interviewing moviegoers, I think the real questions are elsewhere. My own research takes me up the back stairs where nobody goes. My goal is to pick the lock of that projectionist's secret little booth to discover at last what makes the reels turn and the machine tick. I love that quote from Jacques from his book Confrontations. That's probably my favorite Jacques Vallée quote, and I think there's so much truth to that. I do think there is an objective reality behind a lot of this. Nuts and bolts, or other dimensional beings. They have distinct races and personalities and whatever. So even that is nuts and bolts in a sense. However, I think a lot of this is representational, and it does reflect back on us what we put out and meet us where we are. And it's really weird how much is one and how much is of the other. I really don't know, but let me know what you think in the comments below. But that opinion isn't shared by everybody. Here's an article from the debrief that came out recently on January 6th. UAPs and non-human intelligence. What is the most reasonable scenario? And it's a nice long opinion piece, and it's really good, and I'll link to it and you can read it at your leisure. But I just wanted to skip down to the conclusion. The hypothesis I put forward is that if the nuts and bolts UAP phenomenon and the non-human intelligences behind it are real, they are unlikely to be extraterrestrial. Instead, they may consist of remnants of industrial technological NHIs that evolved on Earth up to 350 million years ago. We cannot find conspicuous archaeological or geological footprints of such civilizations because, according to the so-called Silurian hypothesis, not only weather erosion, but also the regular recycling of the Earth's crust through plate tectonics erased them. The anthropocentric I've heard of anthropocentric notion that nothing intelligent has arisen on our planet in the billions of years for which no conspicuous evidence would have remained on the geological record is unjustified. There has been plenty of time and opportunity for many technological, industrial, but non-human civilizations to have arisen and disappeared from the surface of the Earth. And indeed, I think there's a lot to that, and that is probably reality, and I think there are other former epochs of human civilizations that have come and gone as well, like Atlantis. So it's all on the table, and